Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, we're going to get into cause and effect. I know, right? Cause and effect. When we think of cause and effect, we can think of the simple things, right? You put toast in the toaster, right? Push down the little button, and then walk away, do your business until it ding pops up, right? Toast is done. You can think of that as a real simple cause and effect, right? Push down the thing, toast cooks, effect, it's cooked, right? Kind of simple stuff. But cause and effect can get into much more intricate avenues, right? As soon as you walk out the door into the world, you're essentially a billiard ball amongst many other billiard balls, right? And the cause and effect relationship that you have upon and each other, and also being affected by each other, right? So can be the effect, right? But also the cause, right? So if I go to the grocery store and I give somebody a compliment, brighten up their day, there's a pretty good cause and fuels an effect that maybe they have a pretty good day, or at least, that is the beginnings of it, right? And then that kind of rejuvenates them and so on, right? It creates a ripple. The converse is true as well. I could go on and go in there and be rude and just a regular pain, and then they could kind of have a negative day. And it always seems that we amplify the negative more so than anything, right? Get cut off in traffic, there you go, right? It's probably going to ruin your day. It's probably going to irritate you. You probably get immediately upset, all the things. So you can see where there's cause and effect. But we also can own our own cause and our own effect. I mean, you can literally and consciously go out, and if you're going to go to the store and intentionally be a cause for a good effect, and you can do it for the negative too, right? But the idea is that there's an intentionality to it. So if you're a leader in an organization or head of household, parent, whatever, or a leader of any group, you can be intentional about being a positive cause, being a positive catalyst. If we can use another term too, being a catalyst to have which would then give a positive effect, right? Also, the converse is true. You could be a poor one and have a negative effect, but it's also more subtle than that. You can not do something. So if I'm not doing management walks, or I'm not checking in with my team, if I'm not doing things to engage, right, I'm essentially taking myself out of being a positive force, really, a positive catalyst that way, positive cause, right? Then you're going to have a negative effect, even if it's not atrocious to begin with. It's going to be benign. It's going to feel benign, but it's going to be subtle and insidious, right, over time. And it's going to retract. And the negative effect now becomes one that builds in momentum, but also is witnessed by your absence, right? This is why we don't want to be siloed in our offices all the time, right? We have to engage. We have to be out there with our team, leading and mentoring and doing all the things. We can't just sit back all the time, because the effect that we have is diminished. We can't just communicate by memo alone, right? Or emails. That's just not good enough anymore. It's not even good enough to just, do Zoom calls and whatever. You really have to engage in a more personal and personable way, right? So you can see that when you start to retract your presence and your engagement, so then drops off, and the negative cause or effect is that your performance of your team drops off. And this is oftentimes why leaders in different organizations, come and go, right? Because they have either underestimated or not tapped into or completely unaware of their impact on their team. Likewise, and on the other side of the fence, team members can do the same thing. But what it's really interesting with team members is that because what they do is often in their processes, procedures, and the tasks and all the things are so interlaced that that they let off the gas in one area and or are negative in another area, and then you multiply that out, there's an exponential impact, positively or negatively, that your team then brings to what? The customer. And this is what ends up driving unhealthy organizational culture, right? So we end up having orders are late, product quality suffers, and it could be downtimes for all kinds of machinery, equipment, facilities, all the things. Everything seems to be cascading in a kind of a negative downward trend, right? And so the easy reflexive answer is for somebody to go, well, our manager or our leader or GM or this or that, whatever the leader, whoever the leader is, right? Boom, we throw it all our eggs in one basket. And then what happens is that, okay, leader departs and another leader comes in, and guess what? They're still dealing with the same issues. And why is that? Because the momentum, if in this case it was the team, right, that was just not on board and playing ball and playing team ball, right? If there wasn't that synergy and awareness that everything they do is so interlaced to build that organizational culture, right? The mood and the morale there is really created by the team. It isn't something you can slap a slogan on the wall and then boom, I have great organizational culture. It does not work like that. Organizational culture is the effect, right? The effect of what? Of great team cohesion, right? When the team is cohesive, when the team is together, they're on the same page, there's communication, and when we're doing all the things we're supposed to do, even not perfectly, we're still having a positive effect, right? But when we're not doing those things, then that's how we get the negative effect or a quickly growing poor effect that ends up becoming negative over time, right? Becomes an overwhelming wave, if you will, that you can't overcome too easily anyway. So oftentimes that's where you have to go in and do kind of a reset and say, okay, we have to get back to basics, hit the reset button, address issues, and then dive back in. So you have interlacing causes and effect, but we can also be, in the safety world, it's about breaking the chain, right? So one way to break the chain is to be the one to say, hey, put your seatbelts on, right? If people aren't using their seatbelts, hey, put your seatbelts on. Boom. I've immediately broken the chain that of, the potential for getting injured, right? So anything that I can do to break the chain that's going to lead us down a path where the result is not going to be a good one, right? So breaking that chain to say, look, we're not communicating. We need to communicate better. And so now we start doing the things that we need to do, for leadership and management is doing the management walks. It's getting out of your silos. It's doing all those things. That is being a catalyst, being, a good cause for a better effect. Now, you're not doing it, this isn't a disingenuous, it shouldn't be a faux fake thing, just going through the motions. And that's another thing that also can have a negative impact. If you're just going through the motions, that's also can be read by your team as being faux and fake. If they just feel like, oh, you're just checking off a box, you really don't care, you're not in it, you don't show interest in your team, you don't show interest in you're not really synergizing. You're not really, getting in there and really helping the team out and helping to solve problems and getting them to innovate and collaborate together. They can pick up on that and they can figure out pretty quickly. And if they pick up on that, well, that's the cause. The effect is their morale lessens. They're not thriving now. They're not feeling engaged with, and that there's a good communication flow, and that there's a good cohesion. And when they sense that that's the case, then performance starts to drop, and then orders are late. This is wrong. That's wrong. All the things start to go downhill pretty quick. So it's reversing that trend. But to reverse that trend, you have to own some things. You have to say, I need to get out and engage with my team more. As team members, I need to be more communicative. I need to be more helpful. I need to be more productive and not, say waste time. If you're a person who's just watching the clock and then talking to your buddy about the last night's game for 45 minutes when you're supposed to be doing, productive work for the customer, right? And meanwhile, orders are becoming late, and then we wonder why, right? I can't figure out why we're losing customers. Well, backtrack, and then you start to figure out all these little things. And some of it's just habits we need to correct, right? Some of those things, and we have to be open and vulnerable enough to be able to accept. Hey, you know what? We haven't been as disciplined as we need to be for our customers, and we need to kind of step up our game. Everybody, all the way around, no stone unturned. Every single person needs to get together on this and be focused and attentive to one another because we're working together, right? And build our cohesion and our communication, right? All those things. So cause and effect there's an interlaced effect it has on team members. There's definitely an effect if a leader's dropping the ball, or the positive side of that is guess what? This is where the hope side of this conversation is. There's hope. All you have to do is turn that around and start being a good cause to drive for positive effects, positive outcomes, right? If you're out there doing the appropriate, productive, and helpful things, right, for your team, providing the resources, doing all the things you're supposed to do, then your team's going to start to thrive, and they're going to see that you're doing your part, and they're going to be inspired by that, even if they don't even mention it, right? Don't expect anybody to pat you on the back. They're going to see that, and they're going to follow your example because you have a passion and you care about the customer, then your team will. And for those who don't, well, then that's probably going to become pretty apparent who is maybe some of the negative cause, right? And so you just have conversation. Hey, I think we need to work on being a positive cause. And you don't even need to do this one-on-one. You could do it for the group. And then people will self-police themselves, especially if somebody says, hey, we need to pick up our game, we're dropping the ball. Most people, give them a chance, they will police themselves back into pretty good stead. But and that doesn't say you shouldn't have one-on-ones. If you need to, do so. But you also need to understand, you need to give your team a chance, right? Because they need to be able to take credit for their wins, right? Nothing worse than a team that goes out there and gets wins for the customer and then the boss is taking all the credit. That's just ridiculous. So, and vice versa, right? Well, we would have got more wins if it wasn't for that terrible boss, right? It works both ways. So remember, it's all one team. So just talking a little bit today about cause and effect. Of course, you can apply so many examples across so many different industries, but just understand that it's interlaced. We're a lot like billiard balls on the table, and one little cause has multiple effects, right? You may do one negative thing, but it may spur 5 negative outcomes, right? So don't think that when you do one negative or snarky or manipulative, or if you're a narcissist, gaslighting, all those things, don't think if you just do that once that it's just going to be one effect. No, it's probably going to have a mass effect. And typically that, like a boomerang, comes back around, right? And you don't want that. You want to have positive, thriving lives. And you're not going to get that if we're not being positive causes, catalysts out in our organizations and in our culture. And that's another reason why we want to hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage other folks. And when we do that, not only do we find that we're a positive cause, but we're also transforming culture for the better. And when we do that, we're also transforming ourselves for the better. And then it just becomes perpetual. As long as you keep your perspective in that light, it's all going to work out well. All right, folks, have a great week. Look forward to talking to you. Until next time, hit like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you later.